And gentlemen right there, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
What did it mean?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. So, could I take a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Next we have report of closed session actions. So the Board of Education in closed session voted as follows: 5 ayes and 0 nays to approve the following administrative appointment effective January 17th, 2024. Jeffrey Nielsen, Coordinator of Expanded Learning. Yay. So Jeff currently serves as a principal of Madrona Middle School, a role he has been in since August 2018. During his tenure, he has created a well-rounded environment for students to grow and succeed in their education. Previous to his current position, Jeff was the assistant principal of Cashmere Middle School, where I went to school. He came to us from the Los Angeles Unified School District, where he served as an instructional technology facilitator and a middle school STEAM magnet teacher. Prior to that time, Jeff served as a humanities teacher with the International Bilingual School in Hsinchu Science Park in Taiwan and an elementary teacher with the Los Angeles Unified School District. Over the course of his career, Jeff has shown an unwavering dedication to student success and innovative leadership skills that have prepared him for this role. Jeff earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in psychology from California Polytechnic State University, San Luis Obispo, and a Master's in Educational Leadership from the University of Idaho. We would like to congratulate Jeff on this new opportunity. Yay!
All right, let's see. Thank you so much, Board President Park, and Board Cabinet for this amazing opportunity. I've just got a couple of big thank yous and shout outs that I want to give. First of all, to Senior Director Dr. Ben Egan, who has really helped prepare me for this new role. He's just been a constant positive support for me in my time at Madrona Middle School. I also just really want to say how grateful I am to the Madrona community. It is just an amazing gem of a school that the staff is incredible and has really helped me to grow both professionally and personally. The classified staff is just a dedicated group that is constantly striving to support students, and the students and families I'm just so grateful for their support. I'm going to miss it. This appointment is bittersweet. I'm really excited for the new challenge, but will really miss my role on the school site working with students. I'm really excited to continue to build the expanded learning program that Dr. Crumpy and Justine Lang, Catherine Castleberry, and Tammy Psyche have been working with. I can't wait to get to know the school site ELOP staff, the students and family, and just continue to develop the program to give those expanded learning opportunities for all of our students. So thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks to my family for being here tonight. I really appreciate your constant support, and my assistant principal, Dr. Stuckey, or Mr. Stuckey, for being here. So thanks again.
Thank you, Jeff. Any comments?
Just a comment with this comment.
Yeah.
So I want to express my gratitude to Mr. Nielsen. He has been a wonderful principal in Madrona, and so I know you're dearly missed. And you left the mark on the school with your professionalism and all that you've done for the school, and not only for the students, but even other administrators have been underneath you as assistant principals, and now they're principals because of your leadership. And so thank you for all that you've done, and we're looking forward to seeing what you can have for our ELOP program. I think it's going to be great, and so congratulations. So.
Right. Moving on, we have staff presentation and information 8.1 2022-2023 audit presentation from certified public accountant from Moss, Levy and Hartzman. So Dr. Butler.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
So we have Hadley Hui with our auditor of Moss, Levy and Hartzman to come forward. But before you say anything, I do want to say to the board, now stay right where you are. If you remember a year ago at the audit presentation, I said to you I was tired of ASB findings and that I had a challenge for Mr. Diaz and Orlino David, our manager of accounting, to not have any. We have none. So we have no audit findings this year. I know you will expand upon that in a little bit, but I do want to say that our team in our fiscal services area did a great job this year in helping our school sites perform the way that they should in terms of financial reporting. So with that, if you'd be so kind.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Hadley Hui from Moss, Levy and Hartzman. Actually, we are the first year new auditor for the June 3rd of 2023 audit. So I'm just here to give a brief presentation. So basically, we issue 3 reports. One is for the financial statement, and one is for the federal award, and the other one is for the state award. So all 3 reports, we issue an unmodified opinions, which means it's a clean opinion, and we believe the financial statement present is accordance to the general accepted accounting principle. And the number that present in the financial statement, we believe there's no material misstatement on this number. Prior year finding is all been resolved. We did go back to the ASB and look at the procedure and select sample to do the testing and follow up all the prior year findings. So all 3 findings is cleared this year, and there's no disagreement with management. Everything we asked to pull the document, everything we got provided. So no issue, no any disagreement with the management, and it's a smooth audit. And well, we were here for like 4 weeks throughout the school year. So I mean, we did look at a lot of different documents this time because it's our first year. So if there's any question.
Questions? No questions. Thank you so much for your very comprehensive work, and we look forward to continuing.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we have 8.2 report by our student representative, Ms. Silla. Mhm.
Here we go. All right. Thank you, members of the board, Dr. Stone, members of the cabinet. To start, this is my last meeting, and I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to sit up here and share with all of you guys the great things that students are doing in all 4 high schools. From mentioning this idea and concepts to Dr. Stone last November to now experiencing this opportunity with 3 other exceptional peers, it's truly been amazing. And I can't wait to see what our next student board rep, Francesca Dobbins, has in store for you guys. Now to start us off, for all Torrance schools, finals week is coming up for our TUSD high schools from January 24th through 26th. So good luck to all of our bright students. Next, El Camino will be hosting a financial aid event on 2 Saturdays, February 3rd and 24th, in the Student Services Building for a 1,500 scholarship raffle. As well as a financial aid English and Spanish workshop, financial aid application assistant, scholarship information, financial aid counseling, as well as free food from In-N-Out Burger. Next, calling all juniors to be on the lookout for the applications for California Boys and Girls State from your respective campuses. I highly encourage and recommend everyone to apply. This past summer, I had the honor of attending, and actually even to say that it was life-changing and an incredible experience doesn't do it justice. From learning about how our government operates on a city, county, and state level, while also building skills like confidence, communication, public speaking, it's a great opportunity. So please encourage everyone to apply to California Boys and Girls State. Now to start off strong with my home school of Torrance. This past Friday, we celebrated our 34th annual Hands Across Campus. It's always one of the best days of the year. 7 culture clubs performed, as well as our choir. As we take pride in our diversity on campus, it's awesome to have the opportunity to celebrate, learn, and appreciate the authentic cultures on campus while also honoring Dr. King and his dream. And these are the same values that we hope to truly represent as we undergo our accreditation through WASC. We are in full swing gearing up for accreditation on March 17th to 20th. As of right now, we are finalizing our report and preparing to have our stakeholders, parents, and students review them. Other things happening on campus in terms of students, in partnership with UCLA, we are collecting blood drive signups again for our February 14th blood drive. We have our next student congress meeting this Thursday, where students have the opportunity to provide feedback in terms of ASB. And last week, our seniors submitted all their local scholarship applications. And finally, we just opened up applications for our school-wide talent show on February 8th. Next up is North. Congratulations to the girls varsity basketball team for winning the Marina Tournament Championship 2 weeks ago. Their girls basketball and boys basketball varsity teams have been dominating, unfortunately, this season with several wins during this past month. Next, North's ASB has revealed their winter dance theme, Mad Hatter's Masquerade, inspired by Alice in Wonderland. This dance will take place on Friday, February 2nd from 7 to 10 p.m. North's winter dance show will be taking place this week on Thursday and Friday, starting at 7 p.m. Pre-sale tickets are being sold for $10, and tickets will be also sold at the door. On Monday, they are hosting their wellness week, and there will be a relaxation station in the quad during lunch where students can pick up tea and honey sticks. On Thursday, students can make good luck grams in the quad to give to friends for finals. And finally, on Friday, there will be a manifestation board in the quad where students can manifest their wishes for finals and also get a stress ball. North's classes are also looking to fundraise right now. The junior class held an ice skating fundraiser this past December, and with a total of 120 participants, they raised a total profit of $1,166. The senior class is especially looking to raise money to cover the cost of the graduation stoles. Just in general, parents and students, please be on the lookout for any fundraisers in your area to support your respective schools and classes. I know every student is trying to, and at least being a part of ASU myself, fundraising is always a big deal. And lastly, congratulations to all the participants of their annual Poetry Out Loud competition that occurred on January 11th. And a special congratulations to the top 3 winners. In first place was Maya Wong, second, Zoe Rawson, and third, our very own Francesca Dobbins. Next up is South. To start, congratulations to Lucia Martinez Bermudez, a 10th grade exchange student from Spain, who took first place over 300 in the women's shortboard division in the SBSA Kickoff Classic Surf Competition. Last week, Riviera Elementary School's peer mediators held training in the library to help build confidence amongst our young leaders. This week, South will also be holding their mental wellness week. On Tuesday, students will come in comfy clothes and bring their bedside sidekicks to school. On Wednesday, students will be able to sign up for a homemade rage room during Spartan seminar. On Thursday, you'll be able to see yellow across campus, and Mr. Saldana will be holding a guided meditation session, and boxes of sunshine will be handed out during lunch. And finally, on Friday, they're all wearing your school colors, and therapy dogs will be available on campus. And speaking of lunch, the Cruising Cafe will be now roaming around South's campus to make the cafeteria more accessible to other locations. And for finals week, tutoring and cookies will be available during cookies and cram sessions, and quiet rooms are now open in Spartan Seminar to provide students with a peaceful place to study. AP Honors course information meetings will also be held during Spartan seminars in case students want to learn more about advanced classes on campus. And to close, the first ever South High School Drama Showcase will be held in the PAC on January 26th, and El Camino will be coming to campus on January 18th and 29th for informational session and also an Elko College application workshop. And finally, West. The dance team partnered with Choreo Club hosted a very successful January dance show this past Friday and Saturday. It was an awesome start to the new year and also a great opportunity for the fine arts to display their hard work. Turning over to sports, a big congratulations to Lana Gilligan for taking first as well in the South Bay Scholastic Surfing Women Longboarding Finals this past week. As finals are approaching again, North is also hosting a daily review session from today to Monday of next week, dedicating each day to a specific subject. Tutorial Club has also partnered with Professional Study Hut tutors to host 2 final review days on January 19th and 20th in the library. Pizza, snacks, and beverages will be available for purchase, and all proceeds go directly towards their Tutorial Club. West is also hosting a wellness week for students to decompress and relax before finals. Today was Tear It Up Tuesday, where students wrote down what's stressing them out on a piece of paper and tore it up. On Bubble Wrap Wednesday, students can pop some bubble wrap near the cafeteria. On Technical Thursdays, students can explore their creativity by building some clay figures. And finally, on Free Your Mind Friday, they can release their anger by hitting piñatas. You can see a pattern going on here. And lastly, West has initiated their gatherings with the principal, where families of 10th through 12th grade students can actually become co-hosts and volunteer their homes for a small get-together with the principal. It's about an hour-long meeting where they get to share their input and experiences with West High. Mrs. Murata would love to know what is working well and any improvements that can be done. And to close, we would like to recognize the reason why the board meeting was moved to today. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a day recognizing the steps and leadership of Dr. King in the pursuit of equality and civil rights. His dream, although we've gotten closer to achieving it, is still a long ways to go. Torrance is a diverse community containing parents, students, and staff with many backgrounds and histories. Our words and actions, whether we recognize it or not, have a lasting impact on those around us. Many of us were most likely not alive to see his battle against injustice, but the fight didn't die with him. And rather, these values live on today in what we do as students, as staff, parents, a district, a state, and community and country. And that's all for today. I'm open for any questions and comments.
Any questions and comments? On the board?
Just want to say that was great. Another wonderful report from you, and you've been a fantastic student board member here. Thank you for all that you do, and I expect probably that we'll still see you around.
Thank you.
Keep in touch.
Yeah, there.
Should do okay.
Yeah. I just love the reminder of what a vibrant culture we have at our schools. And I remember attending one of the Saturday mornings with Ian Eddy, and he was talking to the students about if there's anything that you're interested in, that there's a place for you at school to engage in those activities. And I think this is the student board member reports are such a great reminder of why we're here, and really centers us in our role as stewards of these really special spaces for students in our schools. And also just wanted to thank you. I can't believe how quickly time's gone by. I can't believe this is your last meeting. But I just also want to say I'm really looking forward to voting for you as president of the United States in 2052, if I did my math correctly.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so moving on, we have 8.3 report from the Torrance Council of PTAs. Ms. Hirata, if she's here today. Okay, then moving on, we have 8.4 report from the Torrance Education Foundation, President Fury.
Thank you, President, Ms. Park, and board members, Dr. Stowe and the cabinet and student representative. It's always tough to follow her. That's why I was hoping Jan would be here. The Ed Foundation is continually getting busier. And as we get through the holidays now, we're working on our campaign still, and that's our financial outreach to the community coming up really soon. And we really appreciate the opportunity to partner with the school district. As most folks know, that we have committed to refurbish all the laboratory supplies as well as the equipment on a quarterly basis, but we really want to be involved with the invention convention. And Dr. Grumpy and I have had brief conversations. Thursday night, we're going to be talking about the level to which the board is going to financially be involved with it. And I will say it's going to be as high as we possibly can. Really appreciate that. And that's coming up on March 27th, I think, at El Camino this year. It's going to be a big regional thing. And I think it's one of the greatest things I've seen since I've been in our community and involved in the school district. Last year, I was super impressed with it. We're waiting for our Sketchers report to see how much money they will be giving to the Education Foundation because of our efforts on the Sketchers Walk. And of course, we're planning for our Celebrate Education dinner, which is April 19th this year, Friday night at the Doubletree. And we're starting our plans for the South Bay Enrichment Academy, SBEA, which is our summer school program. A couple of little changes on that we're going to go 4 weeks straight through. We used to do a 2 week, 1 week off, 2 weeks. According to comments we received from the students as well as the parents, they would rather us do 4 weeks straight through. And so we're going to try that this year. And last year, our attendance was a lot lower than it had been in the past. We had more than 2,400 students at one point. And we're hopeful to get back up to that level as people see the need to have the enrichment in the summer school that we provide. And then I know PTSA is not here today, and I'm sure Jan would tell you that the 42nd Annual College Fair, Career Fair, is on February 24th at North High this year. Again, the Ed Foundation will be involved in that as well, as much as we can. And I really appreciate the partnership that the school district has shown to the Education Foundation throughout the years. This is our 32nd year in existence, and I don't even know how many millions of dollars we've been able to provide, but I look forward to providing even more millions of dollars. Thank you all. Any questions?
I didn't know that the Ed Foundation was older than I am.
Yeah. We're gonna miss out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then we have 8.5, our superintendent's report.
All right, thank you. Good evening, President Park, and members of the board. Happy New Year to everyone. When Dr. Muhammad came up and said Happy New Year, I thought, wait, I haven't seen anybody this year in any of the 5 of you. So thank you for being here. So tonight's report is really dedicated to the 5 of you. And this is in relation to item 12.8, which for 4 years now we've recognized the board for your work and dedication to the community. So it's National School Board Recognition Month, and there's a resolution on the agenda. But you give of yourselves to the community. You step up and lead in roles that most people don't want to. And you make tough decisions that affect the lives of thousands, tens of thousands of individuals, whether it's employees or students or residents of our community. And so for that, I thank you. We just have some pictures here. This one will get updated in next month when we get a picture with you in the center chair. But you know, just your dedication to the community is tremendous, and especially since you're elected by areas, you still are involved district wide and you make decisions district wide, and that doesn't happen everywhere. And so that's commendable. It shows your true dedication to this community and that you care. We've got some pictures here of our student board members, a delegation from Korea, and on the third slide, just a variety of the things that you're involved in, whether it's graduations or awards or the different recognition events. That's all the fun stuff, I'm sure. And there's a lot behind the scenes that is not as fun, but is just as important for you to take care of. So on behalf of myself and all the employees and students in this district, I want to thank you and congratulate you on another successful year in 23, and it's going to be a great one in 24.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stone.
Thank you.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I'm always very awkward with gratitude, so I'm just going to skip over to the next item. We have 8.6 update on our governor's proposed budget for 2024-2025. We have Michelle McKay Underwood from School Services of California joining us virtually to give us a presentation.
All right. Well, thank you so much and good evening, everyone. Glad to see you healthy again, Board Member Park, Board President Park, and thank you for inviting me this year. You know, we have a very interesting budget, sort of big picture in terms of revenues, but an actually not very interesting, details for education. So the first slide gives you sort of an overview of the themes of the budget. So you may recall, and I know that you've heard about the Legislative Analyst's Office budget forecast from this past fall that had us all really expecting a very big budget shortfall when the governor unveiled his budget on January 10th. From his perspective and looking at his economic forecast, it's about a $38 billion budget shortfall. So $38 billion is nothing to sneeze at, but it's also markedly better than a $68 billion budget shortfall. As you all know, this shortfall is a result, or in large part, because of the personal income taxes that were delayed significantly and then came in under projections. On the natural, Proposition 98 would also sort of rebench downwards towards the minimum guarantee, but the governor decides to shield schools and community colleges from taking those resources back, and so accounts for it in future years and holds school districts harmless from that drop in revenues. We also ensure with sort of that continuity that education continues to be and tries to improve upon education as a profession to remain attractive as a career choice. There are some minor changes to try and increase the number of arts professionals coming into schools. And we really also see a proposal to provide greater focus in some of our one-time revenues on the students that were most deeply affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And what you'll hear a couple times is that the governor is less pessimistic than the legislative analyst's office when it comes to revenues. So on the next slide, this gives you sort of three views of personal income taxes, corporation taxes, and sales and use taxes. These are what we call the big three in terms of revenues coming into the state of California. And you'll see sort of the convention in each of these taxes mirrored, but I'll focus in on personal income taxes because that is where the bulk of the revenues for California come from. So you'll see that there are 3 years in personal income tax that we're looking at. The middle section in the blue, orange, green is this year. Then to the left is the prior year, 22-23. To the right is the upcoming budget year. And then within each of those fiscal years, you see how the economic forecast has changed. So the blue bar there is the enacted budget. So this year, 23-24's budget assumptions. Then the orange bar is the LAO's fiscal outlook from this past fall. And then the governor's budget, just 6 days old now for the upcoming year. And you can see really across the board that the governor is, while he recognizes that the 22 personal income taxes came in low, there's sort of no denying that. His outlook into the future is very important for the differences between the governor's budget and the LAO's fiscal outlook. So personal income taxes is $9 billion higher and $2 billion higher in the current year and next year. You also see corporation taxes are slightly higher in the governor's budget compared to the legislative analyst's office. And you also see sales and use taxes is higher, both for the legislative analyst's office as well as the the governor's budget compared to prior levels. So again, we see some important differences in the economic outlook between the governor and his administration and the legislative analyst's office. So I think the one question here before we move to the next slide is going to be, as we move through the next few months and as revenues come in for the current year 23-24, is the governor's projection and sort of assumptions around the current economy and economic outlook, are they more accurate, or is the legislative analyst's office more accurate? And we'll pick up some of that data as we move through the current year and as we move through the state budget process. So in the next slide, we focus on obviously the biggest revenue source for districts, which is the local control funding formula. So the governor continues to fully fund the local control funding formula. It's not very hard when the cost of living adjustment is less than 1%. So you will have heard recently that while the enacted budget projected a cost of living adjustment of nearly 4%, that came down with the legislative analyst's office forecast of about 1.25%. And now the governor is proposing and estimating a cost of living adjustment, the statutory cost of living adjustment at 0.76%. So very small. And for districts that are in declining enrollment, this will reflect year-over-year decreases. And we actually see that at the macro level as well, because of the significant declining enrollment at the state level and that very small cost of living adjustment. The cost of the LCFF is actually decreasing year over year. But despite that, the governor is employing, once again, one-time dollars in order to keep the LCFF whole. So we saw that in the current year enacted budget, and we are also seeing that proposed for 23-24, as well as for 24-25. California now has the benefit of many rainy day funds that were built up through good economic times. One of those is specifically for Proposition 98. We call it the Prop 98 Rainy Day Fund because the formal name is quite long for an acronym. So he's actually drawing down in a discretionary manner dollars in order to keep the LCFF whole. So if you think back to the last slide, if it turns out that maybe revenues aren't as great, we may need to pull down more resources from that rainy day fund in order to keep the LCFF afloat. Or if the cost of living adjustment increases, that could increase the cost of the LCFF and therefore tap further into those rainy day funds. So thankfully, even with these withdrawals, there will still be money left in the reserve. But again, sort of the question is, will we have enough rainy day funds to get us to when those revenues catch up with the spending of Proposition 98 and the funding of the LCFF? So before I turn to the next slide, I often talk about the special education. We've had many years of pretty significant policy proposals and policy changes in special education. This is one of those years where it, along with other categorical funds, receives that statutory COLA only. So speaking of COLAs, the next slide sort of tells the story of how did we get to a 0.76% cost of living adjustment. It is not, how are revenues coming into the state of California? It's really how is inflation being tracked at the federal level? What are the inputs to sort of this basket of goods that tells California what the statutory cost of living adjustment is? There are data points that feed into the statutory COLA. Of course, as you would imagine, as we get closer to the statutory COLA being determined, you're able to get more accurate, and the state is able to get more accurate about what that cost of living adjustment is. And so, as you can imagine, those numbers are going to change, and we see a pretty significant change, as I already described, from June of last year to January of this year. And again, we won't have the actual statutory COLA until April of this year. And it also, as you would imagine, as they collect those data points, they're also refining their estimations for out years. So for 25-26, we also see a drop, less significant, but still a drop in that estimated cost of living adjustment. And then also for 26-27. So your district staff will be adjusting their multi-year projections with these new latest numbers from the Department of Finance. So you can get sort of a clearer idea of what the future may hold in terms of revenues for Torrance Unified. So we know that that drop of the projected statutory COLA is going to be a significant adjustment for a lot of districts. Many will be thinking about how to continue to utilize their one-time funds in order to smooth those projections into the future. So this is something that's going to be a key driver of resources for next year. All right, so the next slide, again, I mentioned there aren't too many issues actually proposed in the governor's budget, which you would expect because there are few resources to go around. So one thing that we do see is a continued focus on instructional continuity. So we saw that through the pandemic as districts changed to hybrid instruction models, and then as we came back to in-person learning. The concern continues to be that the attendance rate statewide is quite low. I listened to your presentation from last month, and I know that Torrance has quite a good attendance rate at the average for unified districts pre-pandemic, but the average for unified districts now post-pandemic is an attendance rate of about 91%. So that, of course, feeds into if students are not coming into the district, they're not generating average daily attendance. So the governor here has a couple of proposals to try and help districts get that average daily attendance back, to get students that learning time that they have missed, and to try and increase that instructional continuity. The one thing that I want to sort of emphasize here is while many of these things are sort of allowing districts to, do makeup time or encouraging LEAs to have remote or hybrid instruction, the far right would be a requirement under the governor's proposal to make sure that LEAs would be required to offer either remote instruction or to make sure that a student could tap into a neighbor LEA's instruction. So that would be something that would actually be a requirement should the governor's proposal come into effect. All right, so on the next page is really just sort of a heads up. The governor mentioned his master plan for career education in his budget summary that was released last week. It was really a nod to an executive order that came out this past summer, working towards development of a new master plan on career education. So I know that career technical education is a significant priority for Torrance Unified. So I wanted to put this on the radar for you. Not really more details provided at this point in the governor's budget, but these are the things that he's going to be working on with lots of different agencies to update, or I should say to create that new master plan on career education. All right, on the next slide, a little bit tapping into career education, you'll see that there are two proposals from the governor to try and help get folks into the teaching profession. Specifically on the left-hand side, you see that the governor proposes to direct the Commission on Teacher Credentialing to create a new elementary arts and music education authorization. This is sort of in line with Proposition 28 and the need for more instructors and the possibility to get folks maybe that wouldn't normally come into the teaching world to do so. And then a little bit more broadly on teacher preparation, on the right-hand side, completion of a bachelor's degree to satisfy the basic skills requirement. Again, trying to remove some of those barriers, get folks more quickly into the teaching profession to try and address the teacher shortage and the educator pipeline. All right, so two more slides here. One to talk a little bit more about the risks to Proposition 98. I sort of touched on them a little bit already along the way. So Proposition 98 is very much reliant upon the condition of the general fund. We know that there's lots of volatility within the resources coming in. We see that when we look back at 2022 and resources came in far short. We're very vulnerable to changes in capital gains. There, the governor says that we are more returning to normal levels of capital gains, whereas prior to 22, there was really a spike there that generated a lot of those resources. We're very cognizant of the deficit that Proposition 98 is operating under right now, when there are more dollars going out for ongoing purposes than there are dollars coming into the state. And therefore, we see sort of that patching of one-time dollars from the state through the rainy day fund. We're concerned about those key budget assumptions, again, with the governor being more optimistic about the economic outlook than the legislative analyst's office. Also concerned about whether, if those revenues fall or if costs rise, then that can exacerbate the Proposition 98 problem. And then the cost of living adjustment we touched on already. If the COLA turns out to be higher than 0.76%, that's good for districts to be able to fund their costs, but it makes Proposition 98 more expensive to fund if the LCFF becomes more expensive under a higher cost of living adjustment. The governor presumes no inflation over the next two data points, the next 2 quarters. And we think that that is not as likely as there to be a little bit of inflation. And so potentially that cost of living adjustment increasing from the governor's current estimation of 0.76%. So again, if that cost goes up, then Proposition 98 gets more expensive, then the state would need to tap further into that rainy day fund. Again, we'll know the official statutory COLA in time for the May revision. All right, so the last slide is just sort of a, where do we go from here? The governor is not calling for any early budget action inside education. There are a couple of issues that he is outside of education, but for the education budget, it's sort of that normal progression, moving from sort of the governor kicking off the process to budget hearings. We've got the first overview hearings in both the Assembly and the Senate next week, and then digging into the details with the subcommittees over the next several weeks and months, again, leading up to the May revision, and then sort of that final sprint to budget enactment by the end of the fiscal year at the end of June. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this, obviously, for the Torrance Unified School District, as well as following all all those updates and changing key assumptions and changing factors as we move through the next few months. So I'd like to conclude my presentation there and be happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Questions? Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I do have a few questions. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what's going to happen this year. I think my first question becomes is, right now, that's the governor's budget, but I wanted to ask if you had any feel regarding the legislation right now, whether or not they are in agreement regarding holding cuts on education, or have you heard discussions about what the negotiations are regarding the budget? Because I know that that's the governor's budget, but I don't know if that's the legislature's opinion as well. I just wanted to hear if you have any insight into that, or.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Hahn. So you're right. This is the governor's budget, and the legislature sort of picks it up from here. And while for the most part, they value the assessments from the Legislative Analyst's Office. They value sort of the nonpartisan nature of the Legislative Analyst's Office. But I do believe they will be predisposed to value and support the governor's budget assumptions. It will be quite difficult for them to take the governor's starting point of no cuts to education and say, in fact, I do believe we should cut education and we should take those dollars back that were already allocated to districts. It is an election year for all assembly members and for half of the senators in California. So they'll definitely be thinking about how to protect their constituencies and how to minimize the effect of these delayed taxes on their local schools. So I think there will be some who will really want to know the details, and we do too, of how the governor is proposing to address that $8 billion from 2022-23 that he is not proposing to take back from schools, and how is that treated in future years as they sort of make up for that and true up that difference between revenues coming in and revenues going out the door. So budget negotiations will kick off in the next several weeks. What we've seen so far from the Democratic caucus is support and sort of approval of the framework that the governor has put forward. There are a lot of new players in this upcoming budget debate, as we've seen a new speaker take over in the Assembly, new budget chair, new subcommittee chair in education, and then we're also anticipating a change with the Senate President Pro Tem of Senator McGuire taking over from Senator Atkins. So there will be a lot of new folks at the table for those negotiations. And again, I think the legislature will be hopeful that in this case, the governor is more accurate than the Legislative Analyst's Office.
Right, just to add on to that, I think my concern is the disparity, right? It's one thing to say you're 38 billion and you're 45 billion or maybe 50 billion. But when you have 38 billion and 68 billion, that's a huge disparity, right? That's not even close. And I feel like the governor's budget is a matter of a little bit of wishful thinking. I'm presuming that most likely, if you're going to take maybe the average, right? So 38, 68, let's meet in the middle, right? Maybe 50 billion, right? That's probably the wisest, right? It's not going to be the governor. It's not going to be the legislature. Maybe meet in the middle, right? 50 billion, right? Let's just say it's 50 billion. Were they automatically withdraw from Prop 98, you think, or would they? Because I think right now, obviously the PPI, CPI report came out last week on inflation. It ticked up again, right? So inflation is not going down, right? So costs are going to go up. That's not going to go down, right? That was one of the assumptions that you made on the slide. That's not going to happen. We'll have to wait on the tax revenue itself. But let's say it's 50 billion. What do you anticipate would happen if it's like 12 billion off?
So there is thankfully a little bit more in the Proposition 98 rainy day fund. So as of right now, the governor has proposed discretionary withdrawals from that rainy day fund. So that means he will need to declare a budget emergency. So I think if revenues deteriorate between now and the May revision, they will need to tap further into the rainy day fund. Under the governor's sort of set of assumptions, there's more than $3 billion at the end of the budget period, so still remaining in 24-25, so they can tap into that. You also may remember that the Legislative Analyst's Office had some sort of other proposals when they were looking at a bigger budget problem than the governor. So things like sweeping funds that were not yet allocated. So there's about $1 billion in community schools that the governor has not proposed to change in any manner. So you might, if it turns out that the budget problem is more serious than the governor has stated at this point, then you could see them starting to tap into some of those solutions that the Legislative Analyst's Office had put forward back in this fall.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mm-hmm.
I am curious, historically, how often has there been such a big discrepancy between the governor's projections and the LAO?
Yeah, I think this is, I'd say this is a pretty big one. And the Legislative Analyst's Office did sort of their first review of the governor's budget. And there's a little bit of semantics between the size of the Legislative Analyst's Office sort of budget problem and the governor's budget problem. So they probably aren't quite as far off, but some of the things that the governor is saying are, baseline solutions, things that sort of happen on the natural. The Legislative Analyst's Office says, no, that's actually something that you need to proactively address. So they're probably a little bit closer than it sort of seems at first blush. But, it is quite a disparity when you look at those top line numbers. So when was the last time there was this big of a difference? I wouldn't be able to say that off the top of my head, but they are usually closer together than they find themselves right now.
Another question was regarding the Prop 98 rainy day fund. So what was how long was it supposed to last? Because I think that if it's 10-ish billion, is it right currently 10.8 billion or so, then was it supposed to, where was it initially supposed to last for longer, or was it if we follow the current projections, it would be depleted in like 2 or 3 years? Is that a surprise to the legislature, or was that sort of the intent of it, to be able to cushion something like this? And how does it work for that to be replenished?
Yep. So, we are really in uncharted territory with the Proposition 98 Rainy Day Fund. It was only created a couple of years back. We've been putting money in, but this will be the first time that we're taking money out. So you're right that as of the enacted budget, it was about $10.8 billion that they expected to have accrued into the Rainy Day Fund. So there are both automatic instances of withdrawal when Proposition 98 just isn't sufficient to fund sort of baseline education. And there are other withdrawals that are based on the declaration of a budget emergency. So under the governor's proposal, he takes money out for 2 years in a row. And at the same time, there's actually money going in, which is quite interesting because money goes in automatically based on a formula that looks at that looks at capital gains and how much money the state is required to put into the rainy day fund. So sort of on the one hand, money is going in, and then on the other hand, money is coming out to protect schools and community colleges. So under the legislative analyst's office forecast back in the fall, I believe you're correct that under sort of their set of assumptions, they would have drawn down those dollars completely. And that was when they were using rainy day funds to backfill the 22-23 problem, the shortfall in personal income taxes that the governor is proposing to account for in future years. So they're sort of addressing the 22-23 shortfall in Proposition 98 in different ways. And the way that the governor is proposing to do it, he doesn't have to tap into the rainy day fund quite as heavily. I think this will be one of those conversations about how much do we want to leave in that rainy day fund versus how much do we want to make sure that we are, supporting current funding versus, saving for the next rainy day. So I think that will be, quite a point of discussion this year.
Yeah.
I just think, and thank you for the presentation. It was very detailed as always. I think you hit it on the head when you said it's an election year.
It is, they will be doing their best to ensure as few negative effects as possible. We do see issues outside of Proposition 98. So we know that, CSU and UC are quite affected. So, there are lots of conversations and, like any governing body, will be trying to do the least amount of harm in sort of the most fiscally responsible manner possible.
Thank you very much, Ms. Underwood.
It's my pleasure.
I think with that very sobering presentation, we move on to 8.7 2023 California School Dashboard Overview Presentation, Dr. Crumpy.
Thank you. Smart.
On to the happy conversation.
Yes, so it is my pleasure to introduce the dashboard academic presentation this evening, and demographically, the next slide. This is data this evening that is based on the prior school year, and when you look at demographically, very similar. The enrollment, as you know, last year was down just a little bit. Our socioeconomically disadvantaged students was up just a little bit. Everything else kind of maintained, and so far this year we know our enrollment is up a little bit, and not a lot, but about another 1% growth in our socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Next slide, Mr. Mara. And so this is, tonight's presentation is how the state holds us accountable, and each of the items that we're discussing tonight have to be addressed within our LCAP and at our local school sites. Next slide. So what's different this year? And you see some colors up here. So we are excited that the colors have returned. So we have a status and a change now that most of our data points have had 2 years as we've returned from the pandemic. We also have what we call the 5x5. And this allows all of us and our school sites to have what is the value for the status. So there's different ones for each of our data points, and allows us to see what we have to do to get to that next level. If you just kind of look at the little colors for example, at the very highest level, you can see you could be in the blue. But if you decrease in your score, you could still be at the highest status level in blue, but have a green color. And we'll discuss that a little bit later as we go on. Our college and career indicator, though, you may recognize this icon from last year. It is still the cell phone bar kind of picture from last year. We don't have 2 senior graduating classes of our state assessment data yet from recovering from the pandemic. So we have a status only for this year. And last but not least, we finally have some normed data to have an English language, we call it the LP, English Language Progress Indicator for the first time. So with that, what do our results look like as just a general overview? You see here, these are the 7 indicators that we're held responsible for with the state, and academically, we're doing very well. So there's a little bit better than the doom and gloom that we financially that we're heard about. We're either in the high or very high category for each of our academic areas, while you still see that we are in the yellow for suspension rate. And then our area that we know we've been focusing on is our chronic absenteeism. As you heard Michelle Underwood even talk about that with absenteeism and attendance in schools. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take each one of these and we're going to go, one at a time. Want to kind of let you look at what each of these looks like. You see here for graduation rate, this is our highest score. We're in the blue with over 95% of our students graduating. We also see on each of these slides, we've put where the state of California is on average for comparison. And hopefully with some tidbits of information that pop up along the way. You see all of our disaggregated demographic data also along the bottom, so we can see where our strengths and our gaps lie with this. I think 2 important pieces on this slide. We see that we declined 1% from the prior year. Actually, this is still a very high graduation rate number. Keep in mind that prior graduating classes had some COVID flexibility with less units and less course requirements that of permissibilities that were given that actually expired for this last graduating class. And also you see that our students with disabilities are in the red. And I wanted to just quickly explain that we have a large number of students at South High School, West High School, some at North High School that are our students. They're with us. They complete school for 4 years. They walk at graduation, but these kids move on into our transition program. They stay with us until they're 22 years old. They are not counted in this particular data point as diploma, they're completers. So they're actually removed from being counted as a graduate for this data point. And also keep in mind, we've discussed through the years that the South Bay High School data, of which 100% of those students are students with disabilities, and their graduation rate is 0. And we are held accountable for South Bay High School's data within this data point. So rest assured, our high schools are graduating our students with disabilities. It's just that how they hold us accountable within this particular metric. Next up is our English language arts, and we are in the green. You see well above the California average, 40.8 points above standard, and we've increased just a little bit. And remember, we did not lose ground during the pandemic in here. So we're maintaining. We are concerned. I'm going to discuss this in a little bit, though. Our foster youth is in the red with a growing percent of students in our district. And so it's something that we are working on and keeping in mind here as we move forward. In math, also in the green, you may notice that our score is lower, but look at where the state average is. So it's quite a bit higher than the state average. This is normed a little differently. Whether it's the rigor level of the math test, it doesn't take as high of a score to enter into the green or into the blue category as compared to English language arts. So they're not identical standardized scores, but no students in the red, and an increase in 5.2 points over last year. You've heard us talk before where we have a discrepancy between our students' performance in English language arts than math. It's higher in language arts. So we're moving in the right direction. We don't want to bridge the gap of performance by decreasing our English language arts performance. And so nudging up in our English language arts and then having larger growth in math is right on track for what we're working on. English language learner, and this is new. We're in the green. with about 60% of our students making progress. This is something that we want to monitor and see throughout the years. Students in this group, if they do well, they exit. And so next year they are not in this subgroup. And so like a redesignation rate, which we also track, that we see it going up and down, where we have a large group that do well or redesignate, that then the students that are left may not do as well the following year. So we're going to kind of monitor this, as this is the very first year that we've received a status and a change, and kind of track the value of this moving forward. We think we get a lot of valuable information from how well they're performing also on our state assessments. Our suspension rate and is also, we actually are happy with this, even though it's in the yellow. It isn't a status in the green. But because we dropped just a little bit in suspension rate, little tiny drops dramatically change the color that you're in, except for the closed school year where we had a very low suspension rate. This year and last year is actually the first time we've been under 2%. So we still are very pleased with keeping our suspension rate under 2%. It is still, you see that the state suspension rate is double the size of ours, and we have no students in the red. So we also have been working on the restorative justice and the PBIS and other means of remediation for these students. And then there's chronic absenteeism. And this is an interesting slide that I want you to look at for just a second. We are in the orange, 14% chronically absent, and it increased. And so this is why I think it's a very interesting slide, and it's an example of that 5x5 that I discussed, where you see that we are over 10 percentage points higher, or better, lower, I guess, in this case, in our chronic absenteeism for the state. Yet the state has a higher color or score, because even though their rate is much worse than us, they showed some improvement. So you can't just look at the color. You actually have to look at the numbers and whether it's increased or decreased, as we move forward. I will say that this is the one area that we knew that we didn't like where we were. Schools have been really focused on this. Dr. Butler is already going to shake his head and very excited. All of our schools are reporting about a 2% increase in daily attendance from last year, which we're seeing as a very positive sign. So the work that John Pearson and Sarah Myers and have done on some of our communication with the importance of being in school and how sick is too sick, and why it's important to be here, we see is working. And while it's a little bit too soon to predict, we do have analytics that we're using that if we were going to take a slice, we're about halfway done, finals are starting, and we know that you're chronically absent if you're absent 10% or more of the school year. So for us, that's 18 days. So right now it's 9. And if we look at where we would be today, we are much lower. Don't know how predictive that is yet. We're tracking where we were last year at this point. Last year we were at 17% tracking. Kind of panicked. You can see we kind of stopped some of this. I don't know that if we're at about 9% right now, if that's going to grow or it's going to be down into 7 yet. But we are really working on this chronic absenteeism piece, as it is our by far our lowest score. College and career indicator, we're not discussing this. I put this in here just so you could see there are many ways to become college and career ready. It is a difficult score. It's something that really counselors and administration and teachers have to look at kid by kid by kid to see how students are college and career ready. But we are very excited, next slide, Gil, please, that 2/3 of our students that graduated last year left us college and career ready. They may have done well on academic tests. They may have scored well on AP tests. They may have taken two or more dual enrollment, college courses, lots of different ways that they've done that. Also no students in the very low, area. So we're really trying to work on our underrepresented and underachieving students and making sure that we're bridging this gap for them. And then finally, I said I would, kind of mentioning that here are all those subgroups that are at the bottom, and they're kind of put together onto one slide. This is kind of part one of a presentation. Next month, and if this is new, Dr. McDowell will be presenting a mid-year LCAP analysis. And new this year, that mid-year report is new. Also, when we present the LCAP in June, you will see that anything here in red, these 6 groups that are in red, will have to have a specific action in the LCAP with how we are addressing those. And you'll hear from Dr. McDowell next month. We're not waiting until the LCAP in June, and for next year, we're addressing these areas right now. In fact, had quite a deep conversation in our elementary principals meeting today addressing some of these areas. But I wanted to kind of show where some of our needs are and where some of our focus would be moving forward. And what are our next steps? I kind of been mentioning these along the way. We're already doing a lot of these. We're not waiting. But now that we're sharing these with you, these results came out and were unembargoed right before we left on winter break. So now that we're sharing this presentation with you this evening, and I also want to thank Justine Lang in the audience. She was integral to this presentation this evening, our Director of Accountability and Intervention. She has also provided a template for each individual school. So they now have data that they can now go forth and present to their staffs and their school site councils and appropriate parent groups as we start to collect what's working and use this as information as we move forward in our goal setting for the future. And so with that, thank you, and I'll take any questions that you might have.
We call this Ninchi game.
Well, it's not really fair. I've been working with this kind of data for 26 years. So I guess the only thing is just to verify and help people understand. So let's see which slide, the English slide first and then the math slide.
Okay.
So with the ELA, so we're looking at the state of California is about 14 points below, and we're 40.8 points above, and that's the standard score. So the variation between us is 14 plus 41.
Correct.
And just helping people understand that that's a big difference. And then in math, where the state of California is 49 below the standard, and we're almost 19 above the standard. So we're looking at, 50, 60, almost 70, a 70-point difference, which is pretty incredible. So thank you to all of the teachers and administrators and intervention teachers and everyone who's working on this for all of the community, for all the parents, and doing such great work for our students. Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Crumpy. Thank you very much for your presentation, everyone who've helped in putting this together. My question is about the data on Filipino students. In the graduation slide, they are at orange level. So it's on the lower side, but yet in their college and career indicator, they're categorized as very high. And college and career indicator is like, according to this, measures how well districts and schools are preparing students for likely success after graduation. So I'm a little confused over how this group of students could have such a low graduation rate, but yet have such a high college and career indicator?
No, I think that's a really good question. And I want, so that we're looking at apples and oranges just a bit, because in the college and career indicator, you're just looking at status. And so you're seeing how well they're doing at a given time. Where this graduation rate, their graduation rate may be good, but if it decreased, then then the color moves down. And so it's a status and a change. And with our Filipino population, when our numbers are smaller and it's not a large subgroup of students, a variance of a couple really affect the percentage change as we move forward. I can follow up with you and give you the exact, I don't have it this evening because it was the accountability part of the dashboard at exactly what their rate is. But if that makes sense, that it may be that this is a decrease in their high rate. And so we kind of get punished by the color moving down.
Mainly because there are so few Filipino students in our district.
Yeah, yes. And the very, very first time we did the dashboard, we had one student that was suspended, and it moved a specific subgroup into the red, and that student was not suspended the following year, and that same subgroup went all the way to the blue because it was 100% increase. And so it's a little bit statistically deceiving sometimes when it's a smaller subset of students.
Understood.
We see that with the homeless and foster youth as well, that there's large variance. So we have to kind of stick and look at how much are they really changing before we jump to conclusions. That's a good catch.
Oh, thank you. And the college and career indicator, how did you come up, or did the state come up, or Department of Education come up with these categories, where it's like one smarter balance, summative assessments versus AP exams and all that?
Yeah, all of these categories have been in work for a number of years, and they behind the background are looking at others. For example, the leadership and military service, they've been collecting data, but it's more recently been added to the complete dashboard. And so this isn't us as a district, this is the state that are tracking success of kids post graduation, and then tracking back to see what it is that affects their success and whether or not they will count it or not. For example, completing two college courses while in high school, it almost guarantees a successful four-year college graduation. And so that data point then is used back here as a college and career indicator.
I see. And my last question is, say for category 6, it's career technical education, CTE pathway. Does it mean that you have to complete the entire pathway, or just like take one or two classes?
No, you have to complete the entirety of the pathway, and you have to either have a college course, or you have to do well on the state assessment. So you have to do two things in this particular category. It may be that it's a 2-course pathway. It may be that it's a 3-course pathway. It just depends on which pathway it is.
I see. Thank you.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Dr. Mohammed.
Yeah, what's going to order? Yeah. Okay. Just a question on chronic absenteeism. Can you talk a little bit about how much of the state's percentage is due to their change versus where they were perhaps at? Because I know we're at 14% and we had a change 1.1%, right? Can you talk a little bit about that? And then the second question to that is, do we know what are some of the drivers for the absenteeism?
So I'm actually going to start with that now.
Okay.
So I'm not ready to report on that tonight, but all of our high schools are student by student filling out a survey for us that is being driven by Mr. Pearson. So we can then sit down and say, what are those categories so we can best address, as you saw that in that final kind of data point, we have 4 subgroups that we have to specifically address. We need to know why. And so that is being looked at right now. And will be, you'll see more of that as we come. So just to kind of explain this again, the state really is further down in their status, right? It's a lower score, but there was improvement in chronic absenteeism. So they were given credit and that moved them up to the yellow. They are really, far below us, where we are higher. And because we decreased 1.1%, it bumped us down 1. So kind of crisscrossed a couple of colors. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, is there any way to clarify that? Because the slide or the chart's a little misleading. It just
Yeah.
shows us that we're behind the state and we're not doing a good job in this area.
Right. And that's the it's not a challenge. It's just something to consider when we only look at the color and then make an assumption that we've got to, for us, I put this on purpose to kind of explain, to not just look at the color, that we have to look at whether or not, where is that status, and did we go way down or did we go, way up? This is what happens is with a 24.3%, chronic absenteeism in the state. They obviously are much lower than we are. Regardless, we're not happy with where the score is. And we predicted this, throughout last year. And it's been something that every school is concentrating, as I said, student by student. If they were, so as at 9 is the number today, if they were at least at 7, we're collecting individualized data for them. So not just considered chronically absent today, but if they're in danger of being chronically absent, they're being included in that survey that we can accumulate and bring that information back.
Okay. And this kind of ties back to what Ms. Lou was kind of talking about, which is the variance, because there's some groups that I've kind of noticed that I'm just a little confused, so I'll kind of have offline conversation. But going forward, if the subgroups are kind of moving as we move forward, that could also be, how do we interpret that? Or if community members are looking at this kind of chart and they're seeing that, oh, this year subgroup did, they were here, and then next year the subgroup went all the way here, and then the following year they kind of decreased just because. How do we normalize that?
No, it's a good question. And for us doing this large presentation of all 22,000 of our students, but more, it's more important when they disaggregate at the school site level, and they really are looking at this, group by group, student by student. So they dig in and find the why, and then we can come up with, what is working and what is not working. So solutioning around this and I think similarly to not being cautious when we see somebody in the blue for a reason, when we look at the fact that they may have we have a few schools that have a higher suspension rate, but they're in the blue because they improved, than other schools that might be in the yellow with a much better suspension rate. So not overreacting to just the color and really taking all of those different components in. When you meet with parent groups and when we work with our principals, that 5x5 that I had the little icon in one of the earlier slides is really important, because each of these data points have their own 5x5 that then explains for each demographic area where what is causing that, for the status or the change, and a combination of both.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for creating this this dashboard. To be honest, this dashboard's not really helpful. Not because of the data. It's hard, right? Because you keep on saying, don't look at the color, don't look at the color, right? Because the color doesn't tell the whole story. That's why I'm saying it's not helpful, in the sense that it's hard for us to get an assessment. It's hard for me to get an assessment, right? You said don't trust the color, and I see like the status of the career college rate is 66%, college graduation 98%. So you're telling me that 90% of our graduates are not 66% prepared, or like 30% are not prepared to go, succeed in life. The data is interesting, right? You said we have 98% graduating, we have 66%,
95 points.
I'm sorry, 95% ready, graduating, and then 66 college career ready. Wait a second. So 66 are college career, but we have 9%. So are we saying that 29% of our graduates are not career ready? It's just weird, right? You would think if it's graduating, you would have 95% graduating, 95% college career ready, right? That's what our hope is, right? Isn't that our mission statement, right? So that we would get kids ready to engage the world.
That is the goal.
Right, that is the goal, right? But I think it's interesting, right? I'm sure that there is reasons for that anomaly, right? I'm just saying that's why it's hard, right? Or like the Filipino, I know it's a Filipino graduate thing, right? So you have Filipinos doing really well in math, really doing well in certain things, and then also the graduation is like yellow, I mean, whatever color, orange that color was, right? So this is discrepancy, right? And so we're like, oh, that makes no sense. How could they be graduating when they're so, oh no, I mean, absent so much, I'm not graduating, and yet they're doing so well in math and English, like. So that it's hard for me to reconcile the data, right? I'm trying to look at the dashboard and try to understand how do we assess this, right? And not only that, but I just, know, like, when you look at green for like mathematics, right? Green is mathematics green. And then we have Asians are blue, and then Filipinos and whites are green, yellow is Hispanic. And so I'm thinking, how does that color move based upon what? Like, what if we have more Asians all of a sudden excelling like crazy? Then are we going to have that thing go tip, we can look good, and then we can have the African-Americans drop off the, radar, right? And then would it affect the dashboard at all? Or like, would it be, because I'm thinking even our demographic is changing, right? We're getting more certain demographics in our district, right? So that affects the dashboard too, based upon the numbers wherever the kids are at with the assessment, right? How do we assess the kids, right? And so that's why it's so hard for me to understand, like how are we doing, in that sense. And so that's why I think for me, it's just really the scores, I think, CASP or whatever, because at least that we have apples to apples, orange to orange comparison. Like this, it's hard for me to see this dashboard and understand really, like, how are we doing? It's just hard. And
No, it is,
Yeah.
but it is the state accountability
Exactly,
system. So
yeah.
this is how we're held accountable. And I think maybe one thing to consider is in the old way that we were held accountable, it was proficient or bust. So if you either hit that target score or not. So there were a lot of kids that then one could argue were not taken into account, because if they were not close to getting there and they weren't going to get there, your school could take every single student and improve their score and get no credit if they didn't hit that one target. So there's not one. I'm sure there's a lot of statisticians that do a lot of arguing and negotiating and deciding for how to best have an equity-based model, and this is what they came up with. So it's not, this presentation isn't it's one point. So it's one thing that we look at, as why, in the late, early fall, when we got our, our test scores, we still look at whether we're meeting and exceeding and what percent is meeting, exceeding. That's another data point that we look at. So this is one snapshot. It's not the only snapshot.
Right. So regarding the snapshot then, what are you looking for? What should we be looking for? Like the needle moving to green and blue? Is that basically, I'm assuming the needle changes based upon last year's performance to this year's performance.
Correct.
Right. So it should move. Right.
Correct.
And if it's not moving, then we're just maintaining or we're falling back. Right.
Correct.
That's what I'm assuming. That's what our hope is. Right. When we look at the dashboard, the needle should be moving for the positive.
Right.
Okay. I'm just trying to get to what is the goal of this dashboard? What are we looking for in terms of going forward? So
Right.
the needle should be moving.
The needle should be
Okay.
moving.
Do we create awareness with our local PTAs about, for example, chronic absenteeism, that, hey, here's what we have, what are some of the strategies that we can do to partner with them and how to get them involved in the conversation?
Yes. And I know that chronic absenteeism, just that one data point, was a huge conversation. You may recall last spring, we had a number of schools that, because of their chronic absenteeism rate, very high performing schools were not awarded the California Distinguished School. And having those conversations, I had many principals reporting that their PTA said, oh my gosh, we helped contribute to the school being, eliminated from being awarded that, and they and have been helped. The PTA has been extremely helpful. We also, after we do this initial presentation to the board, so we want the board to hear this first, then we start sharing these key pieces, out. We wanted this meeting to happen, and then we start sharing so that they are aware and contributing to the solutions.
Ms. Han, did you have any questions?
One more thing in terms of
Oh, okay. For the chronic absenteeism, it mentions that it's grades K through 8 underneath.
Correct.
So it's not, that doesn't include anything related to high school.
No, and I think it's because the graduation rate is high school only, the college and career indicator rate was high school only. And so they left the high school chronic absenteeism off of the dashboard. So it's only kindergarten through 8th grade.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And we look forward to getting more information as you do your analysis on the data. Awesome. All right. And then next we have, let's see, sorry. 10, where did it go? There it is. 8.8 Ethnic Studies course review. I think also Dr. Crumpy and
Well, yeah, I'm going to introduce Dr. McDowell, who's going to come up and give you the next piece of the conversation around our ethnic studies course design.
thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Park and Board of Education. It gives me a really great pleasure to come to you tonight to give you an update on our progress over the last 9 months. If you remember, we came to you in April of last year seeking guidance on how to define and create our courses coming up in ethnic studies. And from this slide, we were tasked by you to create a 9th grade semester-long ethnic studies class and a 10th grade semester-long ethnic literature class. And so that is exactly what we have done. And I want to give some acknowledgement to some key individuals. Alex Ross facilitated the English language arts teacher groups, and Melissa Waller facilitated the social studies teacher groups. We met multiple times over the last 9 months, and we had representatives from every high school in the district on those committees. And so in your agenda are drafts of the 2 courses that we were set out to design, and that is what brings us here today. Part 1 of a 2-part approval process. In the case of ethnic studies, the expectation was to present drafts of the outlines to allow for board feedback and public comment, and then to adopt the final versions of those courses at a subsequent board meeting. So we are here sharing the drafts. And going on to the next slide, I wanted to just remind everybody what each of the courses represented. And the 9th grade ethnic studies class was to be offered as a partner to health beginning in the 24-25 school year. So this September coming up, and that would be 2 years before the first group of incoming freshmen would have to take this or the ethnic studies class to meet their graduation requirements. Schools will be able to continue to offer other health elective pairings, including health and geography and health and computers. There are other options out there at each high school, and in doing so, students will be allowed a choice of when and how they are to meet the ethnic studies grad requirement. And so many of those other health elective pairings may continue to exist as we move into the future. And as the planning committee was working on it, the 9th grade ethnic studies class was determined to be taught through a historical lens and perspective. You'll see that on the next slide. The 10th grade ethnic literature class is going to be offered as an alternative course in the 2nd semester of the 10th grade year, and there will be a traditional and an honors version of both courses, so that students wishing to pursue honors level work will still be able to do it via ethnic literature if they wish. And this alternative English class will continue to meet TUSD graduation requirements and UC A through G requirements in English language arts. And this class is designed through a thematic lens. You had asked for parallel courses, similar in content, but the 2 subject areas, social studies versus English language arts, really lend themselves to 2 different approaches in how to organize the content. And so moving on to the next slide, you will see in the 9th grade ethnic studies class that the course is grouped by ethnic group and in a somewhat United States timeline order in when and how these different groups had their experiences in the United States. Whereas the 10th grade ethnic literature class is grouped by theme, and representative literature will be used in each of the units from all of the ethnic groups to help students work in those themes that really are universal across our history as a country. I also want to point out that at the April meeting last year, we were asked to include additional student groups beyond the 4 foundational groups. The foundational groups were African American, Latino Chicano, Native American, and Asian Pacific Islander Desi. And so we have done that, and you will see that there is an additional unit in the course for Jewish Americans, and that acronym stands for Middle Eastern and North African communities. And not that we knew in April what would be transpiring, but this will prove to be a very timely yet poignant topic in this class because of what is going on in the world right now. And then that brings us to next steps. As this course is finalized and approved in February, the high schools will begin the course selection process with their students. The current 8th graders who will be 9th graders in September will have the option of taking the 9th grade ethnic studies class, and the current 9th graders who will be 10th graders next year will have the option of taking the ethnic literature class. And while that is going on, and while you will be approving a course outline, what still needs to be developed when new courses are created are really the unit plans, the day-to-day instructional activities. And so as this course gets approved, then we will begin working with the teachers from each of the schools who will be teaching these classes next year, and we will begin the unit planning and professional development pieces. And that will span through the spring and the summer in preparation for offering these in September. And then in addition, the last piece is these 2 courses were the first step in a course development process. What we will then begin in summer and fall, just like we did this year for these courses, will be additional 11th and 12th grade elective courses, allowing greater breadth and greater depth and further study for students into the areas of ethnic study. And it's our desire that a year from now, we will be coming to you with additional courses for you to approve from 11th to 12th grade elective standpoint. And so that concludes the update, and we are open to any questions or clarifications that you need.
I'm going to switch things up a bit and ask our student representative if you want to start with questions, or if you need a minute, we can start as well. Okay.
Just to start, I think it's great how we're having multiple options out there for students. I mean, coming from like myself, who's a high achieving student, I suppose, I would have no time in my schedule unless it was in that English class to even put it in. And so I think that recommending that English 2 honors class and tying that into the ethnic studies is actually really interesting and awesome, because I think that the content is not just as interesting, but how can we make this just as an inclusive class for all kids? So not just your high achieving students who will have a hard time of putting this into their schedules, but our EL students and our special ed kids who I know have a tough time of getting all the classes that they need to get in, as on top of getting this extra requirement. And so just making sure that the opportunity to take all these classes and the opportunity to take, like, for example, would freshmen be open to the year-long semester course or the year-long courses available to the 11th and 12th graders?
You know, I think that's probably worth talking about. I think the initial idea is that these would be courses that would be taken after this baseline introduction course would be taken. I don't know that we would write in specific prerequisites for the 11th and 12th grade classes, in particular because we may have a student who transfers in the middle of their high school experience, may not be able to go back in time and take one of these 9th or 10th grade classes and would be able to step straight into one of these classes. But I think the natural progression would be to take one of these 2 broad initial overview courses, meet the graduation requirement, and then have courses available for students for additional study, much broader, much deeper.
And I know I talked to you previously before, but just as for the board and Dr. Stowe as well, I was just saying that I think it's also extremely important that for our counselors and for our principals, they make aware in your 9th and 10th grade year, like that it's really important to map out your schedule for your 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Because I know sometimes things can get forgotten, like getting your art in, getting your athletics in, and getting, I guess, this extra requirement, and that just be extra important. And then my last question is, I know this is a huge jump and we're already making progress, but would we be able to utilize our dual enrollment program to provide additional ways to fulfill that ethnic studies credit possibly?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that is going to need additional exploration and discussion to find ways for students, if they do choose to pursue some kind of ethnic studies pathway or concentration, that could possibly contribute to some kind of dual enrollment or college career indicator completion. Just as pursuing an engineering pathway or a computer science pathway or a health services pathway allows those students to meet CCI. So I think that's an important question and one we're going to have to discuss and explore.
All right. Sounds awesome to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board?
Do you want to go first?
I think
Dr.
maybe we can go this way.
So I appreciate, this is awesome. So my question for you, a couple of questions I have. Number one is so the elective cannot replace the ethnic studies language, English or the class itself, right? It's an elective. You can't substitute that elective to fulfill that requirement.
You mean to fulfill the grad requirement?
Yeah.
Sure. It could.
It could.
It could. And it's one of the reasons we need those additional classes. Let's say a student were to fail the 9th or the 10th grade course, and let's say they do some kind of, let's say it's English, and they were to take an English course somewhere somehow to recoup their English credit. They still have to somehow recoup the ethnic studies credit that was lost. And so having these courses available to students to take down the line to also meet the grad requirement is a possibility. Now, I know at your direction last April that you wanted all students to take one or the other of these 9th grade classes to give all students kind of an equal entry into this. And we very much took that to heart, but it also doesn't mean that when the need arises, that future courses in ethnic studies could not also meet the grad requirement, even though it's our intent and your intent expressed to us last April that we wanted every student to choose between one of these two as their initial course.
But they don't have to though.
That is entirely up to you as a school board to decide which classes can or cannot meet the grad requirement. These are local decisions that the model curriculum in the state of California provides to us.
Okay.
So that very much could be a future conversation on how you direct us to handle these additional elective courses.
Okay, so that we've had a Korean American Studies class, right? As an elective. So let's just say we said, okay, they could take it their junior summer and that could fulfill the ethnic study requirement, technically, if we approve that issue.
If that is the direction you send us in, absolutely.
So the second question I have regarding the ethnic studies, it's studies of ethnicities in America.
Yes.
Not necessarily ethnicity where their Korea background or China background. Okay, I just want to say in America, right? And so the reason why I want to make that clear is because obviously what happened recently, how are we going to avoid those situations, right? And have those kind of frank discussions, because it's going to come up, it's not a matter of if, it's going to come up, right? But we need to have those discussions. But I'm just kind of wondering how, because you said it's historical, right? It's not thematic, it's historical, right? And so obviously we're talking about the history of Jewish America or history of Armenia or history of Korean American in America.
Yes. Okay. And you'll notice that in the foundational disciplines as defined by the model curriculum, it is African Americans,
okay,
Latino or Mexican Americans, Native Americans. It is within the context of the United States. It's not a world history class. It is in the context of US history.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I guess I'll go. First of all, to our student board member, the English class, the 10th grade English class, I asked why not. I was the one that started the conversation, and with no previous conversation, it was the student board member who, of course, ripped 10th grade English apart. And I mean, I didn't pay for that. And it was beautiful how she set the stage for what would come, because I think that that it is such an opportunity. And of course, as you said, students will have a choice. Is it the traditional 10th grade, or is it this new souped up, more a heavier course, just more engaging content. And I also want to thank Mr. Hahn for bringing that up, that and you continuing the conversation, that it is about the American experience. We know school districts who have completely screwed this up and allowed it to become divisive in their community. And that's not the purpose of this program. It's the purpose to bring us all together. There are a lot of groups who are, of course, very engaged in this topic. And I can tell you that I have been contacted, and in fact, just today alone was told that what you guys have written is one of the best they've seen in the country, based on the work that they're doing, and they were very impressed. And then, of course, they did their bit about wanting to help us, but no, they were very complimentary. But I want to echo what Mr. Hahn said is because, yeah, I was reading the part where it's examine connections between current and historical events, and making sure that it was not a world history class, but that it is an American experience, and that by the end, hopefully, all of our students come together. So that's the goal.
Yes, thank you.
Go ahead, yes.
Hi, Dr. McDowell. Thank you very much for your work in this and the others who helped put this all together. Short questions first. I noticed that under the 9th grade ethnic studies, unit 5, you call Asian Pacific Islander Desi Americans. I don't normally see that term being used. Is that what the state is using?
It
The
is,
term
and
Desi is.
So I had to look it up.
Yeah,
To see.
I did already.
So I'll share. It is Sanskrit for the word Desh, which means home, and it is in reference to Indian,
South
Asian
Asians.
culture and related groups, and so that is the current term to include beyond traditional Asian populations, a much broader incorporation of all peoples in Asia.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will be looking that word up.
Yep.
Because they're more used to South Asians, Americans. But okay. And just noticing that when you list it, I think you probably mean MENA community Americans or MENA American communities.
Yep.
Probably just a typo there. And can you remind us, was it and the audience, is it one semester of ethnic studies that the state required? Yes.
Yes, that is exactly for the class of 2030, which will be entering high schools in the 26-27 year. So we've got 2 years to really refine this. They will have to take a minimum of 1 semester of ethnic studies in order to get a diploma.
May I ask how you come up with these outlines, how you come up with the curriculums? Is it from the California Department of Education that they have these guidelines kind of for you to utilize and then put together what will be discussed?
Yes, about a year and a half ago, the ethnic studies model curriculum was adopted by the State Board of Education and published to schools, and we use this as the guideline. So we did not, and I appreciate Dr. Gerson's comments about the perceived quality of these courses, and we agree. But we did pull it from, it's a 900-page document, and it included about 300 pages of model course outlines that have already been approved by the UCs in California. So we had a lot of resources to refer to build something that we felt met your directives, that were aligned with our community and the different groups in our community. And so what we've come up with really, in our opinion, is pulling the very best from the large amount of resources that are available to us.
That's great. We put them all together. I mean, I know this is quite a big project and a continuing project. Just let me think about what what a student's what classes a student's gonna have, like, let's say ninth grade, they have to have their math, English, PE, science, possibly health and ethnic studies, and what else?
Could be a foreign language.
Language,
Be
that's
any
right.
elective. It depends on what curricular path a student is on, whether they are from day one trying to meet A through G requirements and fit every, honors, AP, CTE pathway option in, or whether there's a decision to kind of stagger the start of courses. Language other than English is one of those decisions, like, do you start a level 1 language in ninth grade or not? And a lot of that determines what a student's schedule looks like and where they have room and when they have room in their schedule to take these kinds of courses.
Yeah, great. Lastly, I just want to say that, let's see, how do I say this? American ethnic history is American history. And you probably heard this a lot, like Asian Pacific American history is American history. Same with Latino American history and African American history, Jewish American history, and all the ones that are listed here that would be covered. Kind of going to what Board Member Han was saying, this is all American. So thank you very much for focusing on that and not including, because it's kind of dangerous. You can kind of slip into the different ethnic history that is not part of America. So thank you very much for this. And I understand that a law just recently passed in the California legislature to recommend it to require ethnic studies, which I'm confused about. It's already passed, so why was there another law?
Well, I don't know. I do know from a California high school graduation requirement, this requirement was signed by the governor about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And so if there's something new, a different law, I'm unaware of what you're referring to.
Yeah, I wonder about that too. I'll look up the number for the assembly bill and ask you about it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Mohammed, anything? All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much. I also wanted to, I think I had an opportunity to observe and consultation with students, and so it just all of the input that was brought into being able to come up with the course outlines and the recommendations. Just also want to recognize the committee and all of those who are involved in that process, because they weren't just arbitrary decisions that were made. There was so much work in getting feedback and really being able to synthesize that. And it's very complicated when there are so many different identities out there to be able to figure out how to organize something that is representative and thoughtful and comprehensive. I was curious for the teacher PD and for the instructors, how the selection process was going to happen for who will be teaching the courses, because I imagine that an individual, it's hard to be an expert in all of these different topics. And so are people volunteering, or is that like how, and if there are many people who want to teach it, how is that selection happening?
So I'll start with the second part first. On our development committees in both English and social studies, about half of the folks who agreed to be part of this course development are people who, either because they were involved in the process or because they knew ahead of time they wanted to, are the people who want to teach the classes. So we've already got some experienced folks who are wanting to teach it. Yet there are also folks on the committees who, out of their belief in this, but not necessarily their own individual desire to teach it. And that's not a negative. That really comes from teachers who, within social studies or English, already have the courses that they're teaching, that they've planned for, that they're passionate about. But the first part of your question is that is a site process and a site decision. Every year in all subjects, even when there aren't new classes, there's feedback solicited from every teacher as to what courses they are interested in teaching for the following year. And then departments look at the overall need based on student requests, the number of sections, and try to piece that puzzle together. But ultimately, it is a site process and site decision as to who will be teaching these courses next year. And those folks that will be the ones that our team is working with throughout the spring and the summer to do all of the unit planning that goes along with this.
And down the road is the plan to have teachers who perhaps have extensive expertise in ethnic studies or deep sort of knowledge, subject matter expertise to be able to apply for and like get the role to teach this course?
We hope so, right? I mean, anytime you create something new that hasn't existed before, there is very little existing current expertise. There's no one in this district who can say, I taught this. You know, there may be a few from other districts who maybe have implemented these. So these courses are an example. They're going to be new to everybody. They were new to the committee who was developing these. It's going to be new to the teachers. But I think you hit on the right idea. Over time, we are going to develop expertise in teaching these classes, and if they're taught well, these first couple of years, we don't know how many students are going to opt to take these courses. It could be a small number, it could be a large number. But we know that in 2 years, all students will have to pick one or the other, which means that while we may have a small number of sections and a small number of teachers initially teaching these courses, we know that in 2 years, those numbers are going to go up. And so we are going to need more teachers to teach these classes in the next 2 years. And we will have now a group of folks who have done it for 2 years to be able to support the growth and learning of the new teachers.
Well, thank you. Thank you. One last thing, it's actually been brought up by one of our student board members in regards to honor classes. I understand there will be an honors class for the 10th grade ethnic literature.
Yes.
Right? Are there going to be honor classes for the 11th grade and 12th grade also? Or are you looking at like just electives and not merging it into a social science or English class?
It's a great question, and we don't know the answer yet, because what we want to begin doing this summer is exploring all of the possible courses that could be taken or could be offered. But I will share one example without saying any decisions have been made, right? Because they haven't. But the College Board is releasing an AP African American Studies class that will be available in future years for schools to offer. And that would be an upper level elective that would indeed fall into that honors advanced placement kind of course. Yet we may also create other courses that don't necessarily carry an honors designation to really allow broad access to all students, whether they perceive themselves as wanting an honors course or not. But I think we'll be seeking guidance from you and feedback from our teams as to what mix of courses and honors AP that we want to pursue to really, I think you used the words inclusive earlier, to really give inclusive opportunities for all students in order to pursue additional studies in this. What that looks like, that's a to be determined conversation, and an important one.
But if it's in English or social studies, there will be an honor option for those high achieving students.
I don't know. So one of the subtle differences is there may be courses offered in a department, but not part of other graduation requirements. And that's a difference between being a course, a UC course that meets a specific subject matter requirement, like 4 years of English and 3 years of math, versus courses that count as additional G electives. We do expect that all of the classes that we create, regardless of what department they're offered from, will meet the UC G elective requirement. It helps students feel like they're getting something for their efforts. And I don't want to restrict our thinking to just English or to social studies. We have heard conversations about a course like multicultural art that would meet an art graduation requirement, that would meet an art minimum requirement for admission, and would also then fall into this idea of ethnic studies. So I think we have a much broader palette of ideas and courses to choose from than strictly another English class or another social studies class. I think there are some, as we branch out, some really beautiful ways that we can really make options for students broad. And I think that's going to be important.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you very much.
You're very
Dr.
welcome.
Dow.
All right, thank
President
you.
Park, I have one more question, sorry. Just to recommend to, because I'm not sure if I can say this later on, but when you do develop the additional 11th and 12th grade ethnic studies electives, I would recommend if you could also include student input into that idea. So, because I mean, I'm just afraid that when you decide like, okay, we're gonna have, I mean, it's hard to incorporate like 6 whole different classes, one for each different ethnicity and culture. And so in terms of deciding that, it'd be great to get at least student input to see what we want and see what, because I mean, I just hate to have the idea where like they'd be like, oh, well, how come there isn't like an Asian American course or an African American course when I really want to participate in that, just so that they have like they just know what's going on. Because I know that back in when we were first starting this, had a little small groups, and when I was a part of it, I appreciated knowing, oh, like having the option to discuss whether it was better in an English course or a social science course. And so I think just including students in that conversation, I think would be a great way to also give them an idea of, oh, well, now these things are available and I had the opportunity to like give my opinion on it. Maybe I want to participate in that my junior, senior year as well.
Yeah, and honestly, our intent is to take the same approach moving forward with these additional classes as we did last time around, where we meet and get feedback from students, where we really get broad input. Ms. Park referenced, I think you were at West on one of the days where we were getting student feedback on these courses. We would want to do the same thing. We want these courses to be relevant to students. We want them to meet their interest in further study. And we also don't want to make the assumption that students want to pursue ethnic studies that matches their own ethnicity. One of the very interesting student feedback items that we learned is that many students were interested in learning about ethnicities other than their own. And so we don't want to fall back into that trap necessarily of matching the student to the ethnicity.
Right.
And so, yes, we very much want to seek student and family and community input into what additional courses are offered in the future.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Last question from me again. I very much agree with Student Board Member Han as to the different kind of ethnic studies that might come about. And since you mentioned earlier, it comes down from the state, the California Department of Education. They create a curriculum that you can base out of. Do you know if they're working on Latino American or Asian American or any other one? I mean, they already did the African American one. So are the other ones in the works?
So those are all existing options. When you look at the ethnic studies model curriculum, again, it's a 900-page document.
Yeah.
There is content in there for multiple courses in all areas. The AP course that I referenced, by the way, is actually a nationwide course. That's from the College Board. But the state of California's model curriculum really has excellent guidance and outlines for any number of these courses moving forward. For these 2 semester courses, we had to choose pieces of a much bigger picture to give students that initial broad understanding, but there is room for deeper further study in all subject areas. And again, the last 300 or so pages of the model curriculum are existing UC approved courses that other districts in the state are already offering. And those courses include courses from all of the ethnicities. So we have existing models to draw upon to create what matches Torrance's needs the best.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. McDowell.
All of you are welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, 9 oral communications, unscheduled hearings, non-agenda items. 9.1, the Board of Education welcomes input from the public. Speakers wishing to address the board on non-agenda topics have completed the appropriate submission form on the district website or in-person speaker card. Time allotted for public comments on non-agenda items is limited to 3 minutes per comment, and for a total of 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. Do we have any speakers? Great. Moving on, we have 10.1 speakers wishing to address the board on agenda topics have completed their appropriate submission form on the district website or in-person speaker card. The time allotted for public comments on agenda items is limited to 3 minutes per comment. Time allotted for each agenda item is 30 minutes per topic. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. Do we have any speakers for scheduled hearings? No? None. Okay, do I have to read that every time? I do, right? I feel like everyone does.
Don't worry, you'll get used to it.
10 point. No,
No cards here.
okay. Great. And then moving on, 10.2, approval of amendments to the employment agreements for the superintendent, chief business officer, and chief academic officer for the Torrance Unified School District. So I have a script for this. Agenda item 10.2 is now subject to discussion. The agenda item includes proposed contract amendments for the superintendent, chief business officer, and chief academic officer. The specific contract amendments are part of the agenda backup material, which was posted with the agenda on January 13th. Is there any discussion?
We're just extending the contract. So I move that we accept these amendments to their contracts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
We don't have to roll call that. Oh, just
Okay.
making sure.
Oh, wait. Oh, prior, so let's pretend we didn't vote yet. Sorry. Prior to the vote on the contract amendments, I will read a statement required by law. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54953 Subdivision C3, before taking final action, on an employment agreement for a local agency executive or a salary or benefit increase for a current local agency executive, the board must provide an oral summary of the salary and or fringe benefits for local agency executive. Local agency executive is defined by Government Code Section 3511.1 Subdivision D1 through 3 as the chief executive officer, a deputy chief executive officer, or an assistant chief executive officer of the local agency. In our district, we consider the superintendent, chief business officer, chief academic officer, and chief personnel officer who are employed by an individual contract as local agency executives. For consideration of the board tonight are several contract amendments for individuals who are local agency executives within the meaning of the law. Accordingly, for each contract amendment, we will read the following information into the record. The position of the local agency executive, the term of the new, renewed, or amended employment contract between the district and the executive, and the new salary to be paid to the executive. For superintendent, the term extends the contract through June 30th, 2027. The base salary to be paid is $331,955, subject to potential increases in the future, and longevity stipend of 10.25%. For the chief business officer, the term extends the contract through June 30th, 2027. The salary to be paid is $271,903, subject to potential increases in the future. And for the chief academic officer, the term extends the contract through June 30th, 2027. The base salary to be paid is $246,624, subject to potential increases in the future, and a longevity stipend of 10.25%. So now can we have a
Yes.
vote?
I will remotion. And again, we're not issuing raises. You were just reading those for transparency. What we are doing is we are extending contracts and keeping them a little bit longer. So I will make the motion to accept these amendments.
And I'll second again.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? None. Okay. Moving on. We have 10.3 approval to accept the resignation of Ronald Matali from the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. I'd like to say thank you for your service. Would anyone like to make a motion to accept the resignation?
Motion to approve with gratitude.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those
Gratitude.
opposed? Great, thank you. And then 10.4, adopt resolution HR 012324 of the governing board of the Torrance Unified School District determining the reduction or termination of certificated employee due to a reduction of particular kinds of services pursuant to Education Code sections 44949 and 44955. Dr. Stowe.
Yes, thank you, President Park. So this reduction in service is not something that this board has done before. So I'm going to let Mr. Julio Hernandez, our new Chief Personnel Officer, who didn't welcome him to his first meeting earlier tonight during my presentation, but welcome. And I'm going to turn the mic over to him.
Thank you. Good evening, President Park, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Stowe, community and staff. Before the board is a resolution to commence the procedures for a layoff of particular kinds of service for a full-time FTE, one full-time FTE, and the service is visual impaired. So currently we have 3 staff that serve this particular kinds of service. We have currently in elementary school a 1 student to 1 staff member. This student will be promoting to 6th grade, which currently we do not have an identified student to receive these services for the 24-25 school year, thereby recommending that that position be laid off. We are strongly encouraging our member to continue being a member of Torrance Unified School District. We're working with the association as well to try to find a placement. This is a hard to fill position with a very critical authorization and credential. Should things change, we would want to have this employee provide these particular kinds of services in the future. So we are working with the employee. Depending on the action taken today by the board, we will move forward in attempting to find a placement for this employee in our school district. If there are any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
What other positions can you place this employee?
So we have the ability to STIP or short-term permit or PIP, provisional internship permit, or also a district local authority for 2 years in a position. Currently, we do have 2 special ed positions available that we've discussed with the employee. There may be others as resignations come, separations occur. So we are working with our employee to be able to do that. Depending, again, there is no underlying credential other than the visual impaired. After the 2nd year, our employee would have to take courses in order to continue in that position. Again, 2 years gives us an opportunity to see if there are other students that would need these services that this employee could then provide.
We have to terminate to be able to offer this other position.
We're in discussion right now. We would have to lay off the position because there is no services that we could continue. But that would not mean that we'd have to RIF the individual. We would simply transfer that individual into an open position where the employee to accept the district's offer.
Is the employee amenable to this?
We're engaging in conversations again, depending on the board action today. The board chooses not to approve the individual remain in the position. Unfortunately, there would not be a student for this individual to service. If the board does take action and approve the resolution, we will then re-engage in the conversation as to what those positions would be.
Any further questions? Can I take a motion to adopt the resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor of adopting the resolution?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. All right, consent agenda. Would anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve all consent items.
I'd like to pull 12.5, please.
Yes. Any others? I'd like to pull 17.10.
So motion to approve all the consent items except for 12.5 and 17.5.
Second.
10, yes. 17.
I'm sorry, 17.10. I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, great. So 12.5.
Yes, sure. I mentioned this every year, and this is important for me. What it is to adopt a resolution proclaiming January 30th, 2024 as Fred Korematsu Day of Civil Liberties and the Constitution. I just want to give a little bit more context about of what this is about. Who is Fred Korematsu? He was ordered to go into internment camps back in the last century, back in the 1940s or so, and he disobeyed going into the internment camp, and so he was put in jail. He appealed that conviction, that criminal conviction, to the all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court affirmed his conviction and threw out his case. 40 years later, my friend Dale Manami represented Mr. Korematsu in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the good news is that the court overturned his conviction. And after that, Congress passed a law apologizing for the internment camps and gave reparation to the remaining internment survivors. And in 1998, President Clinton gave Mr. Korematsu the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor that can be given. So I just want to let people know how it is people like Fred Korematsu who's brave enough to appeal decisions that were not right, and who kept with their civil liberties and following the Constitution, that help all of us keep our civil rights. Thanks. And I make a motion to approve 12.5.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Great. I'd like to just call attention to our gifts to the district. If you take a look at the attachment, we received $393.71. And a lot of this was from the Skechers Walk. So I really want to recognize the Torrance Education Foundation and the Skechers Foundation for all that they have done and they continue to do. But there are also other individuals and corporate, like private sector partners who care deeply about our schools and have shown so with their pockets and wallets. I don't know what the right idiom is. I always get confused. But yeah, really, I just want to they do this quietly without any real need for recognition, but I think that they should be recognized, and yeah, and our students, I'm sure, are also very grateful for all of the supplies for music and the classrooms and everything that we're able to provide because of the generosity of these individuals and organizations. I'd like to approve 1710, accept gifts to the districts.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Great. And then scrolling down to, where am I? Yes, we're going to, do I have to read the 18 information, the Williams reporting?
On the information, the
board
calendar and the Williams report.
Yes, the board calendar and Williams reporting requirements are on the agenda for information. And then now we have comments from the members of the Board of Education. So 19.1 CSBA delegate report, Dr. Gerson.
I don't have a delegate report. Would you just like me to make my comments?
Yeah.
First, congratulations on running your first meeting. Hope it was fun. You did well. Thank you, Dr. Stowe. Our brief moment of recognition for School Board Appreciation Month, which is, I don't know, makes me feel silly. Doesn't it make you feel a little silly? I know it's the Ed Foundation board meetings coming up this week, which is one of my responsibilities, so I'll be there. And I really don't want to, I don't have much to say today, so thank you. Thank you. There's so many reports.
Great. We have 19.2 Lackstar Board of Education Representative report from Mrs. Liu.
There's no Lackstar report for this meeting, but I guess I can go into my regular communications. Oh, boy. Well, first I want to say Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone had a good holiday season, and good luck to the high school students on their finals next week. Thank you for the school board members for being here also. And also for the high school seniors. Most of the college applications, I believe, have been sent in. I think the deadline's probably passed for most, if not all of them. So I am keeping my fingers crossed for all of you seniors out there, and good luck, exciting times. And then I usually just give some quick recognition of the resolutions that we have. Much like a board member Gerson, Dr. Gerson, I'll just call you Dr. Gerson, it's just easier. Dr. Gerson said, "Thank you very much, Superintendent Dr. Stowe, for recognizing the school board member week." Is it? Oh, we get a whole month. Oh, yes, it's in 12.8, adopt a resolution proclaiming January 2024 as School Board Recognition Month. Thank you. It was very sweet of you. And we had our own slides. That was pretty cool. And another resolution that was adopted, also very important, is a resolution proclaiming February 2024 as African American History Month. And then also another resolution proclaiming February 5th to the 9th of this year as School Counseling Week. And then finally, I just want to do my normal recognition of the classified employees anniversaries. We have Earl Horn from West High School for 10 years of accredited service. Teresa Uloa from Hamilton Adult School, also 10 years. Thank you very much for your public service and here at Torrance Unified. For 20 years, we have Vince Grosso in the Maintenance and Operations and Facilities Department. Thank you also for your many years of service, public service to all of us. That's it.
Great. All right, and then we have our SoCal Rock Board of Education representative report from Mr. Han.
We have no report because we're meeting next week, so no report from that. And I'll just conclude my remarks. First of all, to Dr. Butler, Dr. Stowe, and Dr. Crumpy, we appreciate you guys and gladly extended today the contracts. And so we know that this past year was difficult, and not only that, but the past couple of years with COVID. And so I want to personally express my gratitude for all your hard work, for keeping our district sound and academic and focused, especially through all the craziness and all the transitions. And so, and we hope that the next 3 years won't be as crazy as the last 3 years for sure, but you never know. But again, I'm very confident that you three will navigate us with your leadership and your wisdom. So I want to personally express my gratitude for all your hard work for the past 3 years and looking forward to the next 3 years. Last but not least, when I became a school board member, the previous board member that encouraged me to come on, Don Lee, said the best thing about being a board member is that you get to hand off your diploma to your child. It's just true. That has been my highlight. I only did it once, I had one, but I get to do it again this year. But I think for me is that the past 3 meetings, I think I would say the highlight has been having my daughter to be a student board rep. You can't plan it. You don't know that would ever happen. But it was a delight for me to witness. I texted my wife today that, man, Stella was so articulate today, so much better than me. But it's been a wonderful delight. And I look forward, and I hope that the experience that you gained here, that you will continue to give back to the community, that maybe one day you'll sit in this chair and you'll continue to be a voice for students, that you will be a voice for change, a voice for the common good, for the people. It's been a delight. So Stella and I have a lot of disagreements when we get home. She goes, "Dad, you're so dumb," or whatever. It's been fun. It's been fun to hear her feedback and see her passion. And you can only hope that your children can grow and be passionate about these things. And so it's been a wonderful delight. And so I had fun. Maybe not you, but I had a lot. Thank you.
That's great.
Dr. Mohammed.
I'm 19.4 on the agenda. Other comments. I just want to congratulate you on your first successful meeting. So that's awesome. And thank you so much. I think your dad put it really well. And when Miss Park mentioned that we'll see you probably running for a national office, then you're always welcome to consider me for Secretary of Education. I should be available, to serve. So keep me in mind. And with that, I also wanted to welcome Mr. Hernandez to your first meeting, and teaming up with cabinet. We do, as you saw, the approval of the contracts. We have a strong board, strong team, and a great district, and just wanted to welcome you to the family on that. So thank you so much. And with that, conclude my comments. Thank you.
Can I have one more comment though?
Oh, yes,
That's
of
just one
course.
quick comment. I have to make mention, Dr. Muhammad's bow tie. It looks sharp, bro. I was like, wow, it looks good. I had to make a comment today. I was gonna say it looks so good. So, just one last comment. I had to make a public comment about how good it looks. Maybe next time I'm gonna wear a bow tie.
Oh, yeah.
It looks good.
And then one last comment, I was talking, earlier in Dr. McDowell's presentation, I mentioned that there's a new bill that just passed in regards to ethnic studies. I thank you, Dr. Butler, for letting me know that Assemblymember Mike Fong had required ethnic studies for California State University graduation requirements. That's what it was. Oh, no, that's one of them. Another one that actually I just found is same Assemblyman Mike Fong passing AB 1354. It was actually the passage of Asian American Studies bill with the local high school students. So it wasn't a general ethnic one, but I got that confused. All right, thank you.
And then, would you like to make your final board comments?
Oh, well, thank you guys so much. Again, it's been a really cool opportunity. And also just to work with these kids or these students over there with me. I mean, I think it's a lot to just sit there and listen to this now 2 hours and 2.5 hour meeting. And my word count for my doc today was over like 1,500 words, just because we were all clamoring to get stuff in from all our schools. And so it's been a really cool journey, and I think it's only going to get better in the next 2 quarters. And so I'm excited to see what else we can do and what else is in store. And also in terms of we're setting the precedent this year, and so it's interesting to see how, I guess, our legacy is going to live on, just in the small things that we do, whether it's the small conversations about ethnic studies today, or whether it's possible meeting with elementary school students later on. I think there's so much potential into what the seat can do and what the seat can offer. I just think it's going to be really exciting to explore, whether as the rep or off behind the scenes as they're doing here, just supporting me today. And so just thank you guys for allowing us with this opportunity and encouraging us along every step of the way. It's going to be a really interesting journey, and I will keep all of you guys in mind if that ever does come to fruition. And what did you say, 2052?
I think so. I think that you'll be able to.
That's amazing. But this meeting's only 2 hours, 30 minutes. If you go to city council, it's until 2:30 in the morning. So
That's on you.
So finally, with my comments, I'd also like to say welcome, Mr. Hernandez. We're so happy to have you. We care deeply about our employees, and we also want to be a district that cultivates excellence, professional excellence, but also a place where people feel a sense of belonging. And so we really are looking forward to the ways that you are going to lead the personnel department in having TUSD lead in those ways. I also wanted to mention that we adopted a resolution today proclaiming February 2024 as African American History Month. And as our ethnic studies discussion started the conversation about and how Mrs. Liu and the other board members have also emphasized African American history is American history. And I think it's just really wonderful that we've adopted this resolution, really honoring the invaluable contributions to our civil rights, our literature, scientific discoveries, arts, music, so many different areas where our African Americans have so boldly led, and also wanted to recognize that we adopted a resolution proclaiming February 5th through 9th as School Counseling Week, and for our counselors who are really on the front lines of working to combat our mental health crisis and really serving our students and being present in different ways. And I just want to also encourage students or other folks to be able to take this opportunity in 2 weeks, 3, I've lost concept of time, but to be able to also just in person say thank you and express gratitude for the work that they do. This was, as some have mentioned, my first board meeting that I've led in person. And I really thank you for your grace through my mistakes. I know you have to sort of, erase your memories here and there as I'm figuring things out, but I really appreciate it. And now it is way past my bedtime, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you.